our second session, which will be to throw ourselves right into the Arctic Resilience Report with its project overview and methodology. And it's wonderful to hand over to you, Annika. You've been spearheading us all the way so far, so please give us the up-to-date on where we are. So over to you, Annika.
Thank you very much. I figured it might be useful to give you a sense of the project as such and a little bit of the overview, and then will you get from other people a little more in-depth on specific issues. The Arctic Resilience Report as a project really has its political origins in the Nuuk Declaration, where the ministers noted with concern the accelerated change in major components of the cryosphere and the profound local, regional, and global effects of unexpected changes. And that was, of course, the SWEPA report from the Arctic Council. It emphasized the need for forward-looking Arctic cooperation with a view to increase Arctic resilience and to enhance Arctic Council leadership to minimize human and environmental impacts of climate change. And based on that, we were able to develop a proposal. We had a scoping workshop in Stockholm and developed a proposal for the Arctic Council senior Arctic officials that was approved then in Luleå last fall, almost a year ago. And with that in our back, we could get started. And we started what we have done in 2012. We started off with some important but mainly administrative type work. We have a project steering committee with representatives of the Arctic Council member states and the permanent participants and some of the organizations that we work closely together with. We have an implementation plan in place now. What are we going to do actually? We have an assessment integration team with a scientific expert knowledge that's going to help us make a good assessment. We, in August, had a kind of a small workshop in Stockholm discussing methodology. How do we actually go about doing a resilience assessment? When I went into this, I had kind of a naive sense of that was an established methodology. I was very wrong. It's nothing like an established methodology when doing something like this on a pan-Arctic scale. So we have had to do a lot of hard thinking and also trying to figure out a lot of the conceptual issues. So we started that thinking at the August Methods workshop, and it's still ongoing. Now the writing of the interim report is actually in progress, in various stages of progress, but nevertheless, writing has started of the report that we need to deliver to the ministers in May 2013. And now we're here at this workshop, and the purpose of this workshop that I alluded to just a little bit earlier is to help move the project forward. It's really useful because some of the people writing realize, oh, we really have to write now. There's something happening. So in that sense, it's very useful. But in terms of content, focusing on the traditional knowledge that I mentioned earlier, and I don't think I need to dwell more on that now. We will also then tomorrow apply some of the resilience assessment methodology to one of our pilot case studies, which is the reindeer herding, which will be then an experiment to see how does this kind of methodology work in a traditional knowledge context? How does it need to be changed? Is it valuable? How does science need to rethink in order to make it useful? Because that's the ultimate test, I think, of any methodology, is that it's actually useful for someone. It's not useful if it's just an academic journal. Forget it in this kind of context. And then, as I mentioned, being closer to northern realities than we would be in Stockholm. And the goals of the project as such, and Martin Sommercombe will talk more about this later, but I thought it would be useful to have it straight up here, is to identify the potential for shocks and large shifts in ecosystem services that affect human well-being. So human well-being and ecosystem services are two key concepts. It's not just looking at the changes in the physical environment in isolation. Analyze how different drivers of change interact and affect the ability to withstand shocks, and actually both through adaptation and transformation. And here I think some of the issues that Svein brought up in his question, we have both the shocks that are coming, but we also have drivers of change and shocks that are affecting the ability to withstand shocks. So it becomes kind of a double whammy that we need to understand when we erode resilience, for example, by coupling to the global markets or other drivers of change. That affects our ability to also withstand shocks that might come from climate change or other global changes in the physical system. Understanding that interaction. And the last step, to evaluate the strategies for adaptation and transformation, of course, talks very much about linking into decision-making processes of various kinds. We have to make this matter. And what do we do to make it matter? One is, it has to be credible knowledge, it has to be relevant knowledge. In credible knowledge are many different types of knowledges, but we have to think creatively in how to ensure that the knowledge we include is credible in relation to both traditional knowledge and in relation to science. It has to be relevant. We need to link to the policy sphere. The Arctic Council is the primary link that we are obliged to do, but actually most decisions that affect resilience are not made in the Arctic Council. They are made at all kinds of other levels of governance, ranging from the global international, to the national, to the local, to the individual. How do we actually address that challenge of linking to decision-making at that kind of really broad context? So we have diverse audiences with diverse needs at the same time as we kind of have to choose a scale to have in focus. The Pan-Arctic scale is, in a sense, the focal scale for the project overall. We'll go down to local in specific cases, but for the project as a whole is the Pan-Arctic. And then we have to recognize that all the levels or all the scales are connected to each other. Both the local processes within the SIDA or in a very small, very localized place on the ground in an ecosystem, or in the global gold market or copper market or in the global climate system. There are links between these systems, and finding ways of understanding those, something has to be included in our project. So what we have translated then into the project is actually putting quite a bit of effort into method development, both trying to conceptualize the links between what's usually the social science sphere and the biophysical science sphere, which in Western scientific tradition, unfortunately, is very divided. The science and traditional knowledge, and also the Pan-Arctic and specific. How do we conceptualize that? And we will go work with that a bit this afternoon. We have to bring it together in some kind of integrated assessment to ensure holistic analysis in the end, even if we dive into specific, even if we spend half a day on reindeer herding, we need to bring the lessons from that focused knowledge to a level where it's also relevant, maybe for decision makers looking at drainage systems in Kiruna. How do we make those links? We have to bring that together. Case studies, like the reindeer herding case study, is really a way to engage with ongoing research, like the ELAT project, because there are a lot of research projects going on, and trying to link so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then capacity building, which I do want to spend just 2 minutes with. We think any resilience assessment in a changing Arctic is never going to get done. It's always going to have to be redone over and over and over again. This project ends in 2015. Therefore, we have said we need a component of capacity building to ensure that assessing resilience can be a continuous process that can work at different settings. And one of the first things we're doing is developing a course for University of the Arctic on Arctic resilience as part of that. And we'll see what we can do. Depends a little bit on funding, depends a little bit on capacities, but that is anyway our plan. And then, of course, the workshops as a way of getting interaction with people from different backgrounds and different knowledges. And here's just a little bit of a timeline where you can see these different parts: the thresholds analysis, the analysis of adaptive and transformative capacity, pilot case studies are starting up. We're bringing them together more. How do these issues actually affect each other in the second phase? And the final report to be delivered at the end of the Canadian chairmanship of the Arctic Council in May 2015. I also want to mention that we, of course, want to make good use out of the other assessments that are going on in the Arctic Council. The Arctic Biodiversity Assessment was mentioned here earlier. They're delivering their report in May. The Arctic Human Development Report is delivering in 2014. There's a report on ocean acidification. There is an expert group on ecosystem-based management. We, of course, need to link to the knowledge that's being developed there, because we won't be able to dive into the specifics of many of these issues. And there's also the project within the Arctic Council that's now called Adaptation Action for a Changing Arctic. It's a project that's still very much in the making, being developed. Not quite sure where it's going, but I see very much the Arctic Resilience Report as contributing to that project, and we have to make sure to find good ways of doing that. Here's just another way of having an overview where we can see the basic components of the resilience assessment methodology, the different steps. Resilience of what and to what I won't talk about here, but the potential thresholds is one of the focus for the interim report, and will then be the focus for this workshop this afternoon. Resilience, adaptive and transformative capacity will then be focused for a little bit of some presentations. The presentation that would be an online video presentation on day 2, but hopefully also some place for discussion. It's not the major focus for the interim report, but we're doing some work there. We're moving slowly then towards the policy discussion, will it be more the focus for the final report in the project as a whole. And I think I'll stop with that and also let you know that we do have a web page where we do place our material. For example, we will be placing the recordings from this workshop, so if you want to go back, at least for me, there was a lot of new, very valuable information that came out this morning, and I was not able to capture everything, but there will be possibilities for me and others to listen to it again, and so please keep up to date there. And I'll stop with that. Thank you very much.